In this edition of SmartBites, Yuvaraj Thanikachalam outlines the QA aspects of blockchain technology. He is the MD and Chief Consultant of GetWise Systems Private Limited. You mentioned about the need to test the blockchain stack. Could you please illuminate us?
The way the stack is built, bottom up, if you look at it, there is always the infrastructure layer. The infrastructure layer is the computing and the storage. So computing power and storage today is getting as a utilities. So computing power, it's available in abundance. Similarly, storage is also today made in such a way that it is also available in abundance. So these infrastructure companies, that comes as the bottommost layer is the infrastructure. Next to that is the network. So we know networks, whether it's wide area network or any kind of network we are talking about, multiple computers has to synchronize on a very fraction of second. So the synchronization of data is very critical in blockchain. So data which is given to one computer gets synced up almost in fraction of second with other computers, so that all the stakeholders who owns their own systems get the real world state as it is happening in the real world. So that is also primary importance in blockchain. So that network layer, so the consensus mechanism they call, how every computer comes to an agreement and accept the data into their ledger, that's a network layer which needs to be a very primary importance to get tested. The next is the protocol. Protocol is again broken into three important: this consensus algorithm, and also the mechanism in which the data transmission occurs. So open source protocol companies, Ethereum, Hyperledger, Coda, all these people have almost built this, and many versions are evolving day by day. So they are trying to address issues related to this consensus and the data transmission. So the way the data is accepted by one computer and validated for all these client side, server side validations we talk about, databases, right? These comes in the protocol layer. The protocol layer, before accepting a data into the ledger, has to do all kinds of preconditions, prerequisites. Those are getting built into this kind of a protocol layer. Next comes is the business workflow or a solutioning layer, where the business process differs as per the business model. So any company today who wants to adopt, they actually build their business processes on this area. Their logics of checking this data which is coming into the system or the data which is going out of the system is as expected. As expected is again from a tester standpoint, you should always check this is the expected result, this is the actual result, right? When a blockchain developer builds the logic, it sits on this business layer. Next comes this the front end. Front end, this user experience and customer experience is the key for the consumer technologies. That users make a decision or to hold on to a particular brand or not completely today depends on the customer experience. So the front end layer and the regulations like privacy protection, data protection, all those getting added from regulators like GDPR kind of regulators. If you look at it, the testers community, the quality professionals has to look at when they are accepting the system into production at all the levels it has reached the acceptance.
So what are the nuances in testing blockchain applications?
Okay, so I use this 4D acronym in blockchain. So blockchain today is a specialized testing services in the market. So as we spoke about decentralization, democratization, distribution, and digital assets, these are the 4 Ds which has to be kept as a principle, fundamental principles on which blockchains are built. If many times based on the requirement, some of them will get compromised. For example, all the blockchain networks need not be a decentralized, because that is not the way to go. If that is the requirement, business requirement, you dilute that decentralization to an extent, you put an access control layer and bring a data governance, not governance from a ownership. There are protocols like proof of stake. So based on the access level controls and the endorsement policy, there is a concept called who needs to endorse the fact which has to be recorded. So keeping these two in mind, you have to apply your test cases. The test cases and scenario which you create If it is really a decentralized system, you have to create scenarios as per that and test it. Okay, when it comes to digital assets, so because there is a possibility in blockchain to create assets, and suppose a car registration system, car is converted into a digital asset and tracked in the virtual world. Then if you want to check the status of the asset, so land records, land registration is one of the popular use cases in the governance. When you notarize, there are a lot of frauds happen to the land assets, right? The mutations, wrong titles and all those. When you digitize this asset and take it to a blockchain and track it, everything that occurs to this particular asset, that's a digitization of assets itself. So if you are testing a use case where there is a digital token, digital currency, or an asset that is being tracked by the network by various stakeholders who transact using that medium, then you need to apply different set of test cases. You have to create test scenarios and test cases to understand how this value is being managed in the blockchain network. All the hacks which has occurred in the world is to siphon the value from this network. The hackers, we are talking about close to $2 billion worth of $2 billion worth of money has been hacked by the cyber criminals since 2017, in the last 4 or 5 years, publicly available information. So whenever there is a new value is getting created, there are people who want to steal the value. So the security and the penetration testing which we are talking about, that's a specialized, takes a lot of more importance when it comes to blockchain, to safeguard whether all those checks and balances, controls are put in place to secure the value, and it goes only to the people who are supposed to handle that value. That's another kind of a specialized testing blockchain. Another democratization is, what we mean by democratization is, somebody cannot manipulate the data. Somebody cannot claim the data for themselves. Today, there is an issue, even US Senate is talking about, saying that who owns the data on any internet site? User owns the data, or the company which gathered the data? Whose data it is? So the GDPR kind of a compliance which I was talking about, the person's data is their own data. So when it comes to data democratization, you have to apply test cases in such a way there is a way that data is not misused. Data cannot be used for reasons which was not stated by the application. So from all standpoint, you can test a blockchain and prove it is worth for the public use. So this is a specialized kind of a testing. People without understanding the technology, why it is in the first place, they cannot certify this system. Therefore, these are nuances. People at a technical level talk about block size, the time at which block is created, length of the block, size of the block. Those are related to the non-functional requirements of the blockchain testing. From a functional requirement and non-functional requirements, both has a wide new variety of approaching the testing.
Are there specialized tools for testing blockchain applications?
So that particular space is not matured enough. But what is happening with respect to tools today is the engineers and the designers who are actually building the protocol layer and business application layer, when we spoke about the stack, in those areas they are actually giving a reverse engineering and re-engineering kind of tools. So this reverse engineering, re-engineering tools are used by other developers to validate that the code, especially there is a smart contract auditing. So it's actually a technical white box testing. So smart contract auditing is a white box testing. So you have to close all the loopholes so that a hacker cannot manipulate that code in such a way that value moves to his address. So the smart contract auditors use these tools. There is a tool from Ethereum, Solidity based tool itself, where you have to open it, go line by line. It's like a code branch testing, and see that how this value is introduced, how this value is tagged to a particular unique identifier, which is PII information, and when a transaction is initiated, how the contra checks, because in Bitcoin there is no contra ledger application there. So you have to ensure always there is an anchor value. So to be precise, these tools are more technical in nature for the code verification and validation, but all the existing testing tools can be applied at an application level. And security testing, for specialized security testing, when a value is requested, when value is moved from one address to another address, or one ledger is recording the value, people use this private keys, which is important in blockchain. How this key is handled, that has to be thoroughly tested so that these keys do not land up in places which is a big risk to the whole system itself. So there are tools to store the keys, and there are tools you have to again test it that the keys are securely managed, and anybody who wants to update the key or recreate the key, how they are created. And so this kind of testing is available. I would certainly call.
Are there a lot of tools?
No. There are not much tools. Only those companies which has created this, they themselves there is no third party who has created a validation tool. IBM is heavily investing to come up with both development and testing tools now. IBM is trying to lead this race.
You mentioned vulnerability and pen testing as being very key, despite blockchain being a highly secure tech in our conversations. Curious to know why.
Today, blockchain as a design, the encryption logics, that SHA 256 based encryption, triple DES or any encryption is just to do a one-way hashing and storing the hash value. So there is no chance for somebody manipulating the truth of the information. And if it is as written and signed by multiple parties, so nobody is going to change it. But somebody can actually post an incorrect transaction, let's take. So if they get access to the private keys, they can sign on behalf of you. So Intel kind of companies are trying to also endorse the transaction at an hardware level. They are trying to do this at a chip level. So they will give one more endorsement that it is transaction is initiated by the device which is supposed to be used for a particular transaction, very highly thing. So the security and penetration testing is basically applied to see in various way, active monitoring ways, who are the people who wants to misuse what is being held by the blockchain addresses. If there is a digital token, digital asset or a digital value based use case, then people who are not supposed to unauthorized access and unauthenticated transaction, both are no-nos to the ledger. Once it goes to ledger, you can know it happened, but you cannot do anything. You can undo anything there. Therefore, these access points, endpoints testing is very critical. So as long as the system is live and running, all these access and endpoints has to be secured completely and monitored in such a way that it's only given access to the devices which has to connect. Because in IoT kind of environment, there are possible counterfeit and fake devices can get access to network. So which is very dangerous. For example, in an IoT industrial 4.0 kind of thing, where autonomous decisions are given, if you can switch off the AC, device is given control by a smart contract. If some other device penetrates that environment, acts like maliciously, then you have to secure and understand the device is an authorized device. So there are various test cases, scenarios has to be put in place and proven that these devices are authorized devices and access is given, and the transaction which they post is also a validated transaction by multiple stakeholders.
So in this digital age, what do you believe is the role of human intellect in QA?
Creativity and consciousness. These two is human. So the human, when they use the technology for their welfare, well-being, they expect certain benefits out of this technology. Though artificial intelligence can be inbuilt to test and take the decisions, it is taking decision on behalf of some authority or some control. With respect to QA, the intellect which we are talking about, intellect will be replaced certainly by the machines. No doubt they can do much faster computational, and they can store large amount of data, they can analyze large amount of data, the speed which human brains cannot process information. But when it comes to creatively using those stuff and validating, technology promises something. There is a hype, there is a truth, there is limitations. You get information with all kinds of packaging. But the quality assurance role, it's a fact finding, it's a investigating, it's an analysis, analytic work. They have to wear these hats like an investigator, like a fact finder, fact checker, and bring out the truth and the fact in the first place for what the technology has been built and designed. That is going to continue is my optimistic view, because they have to play, but they are going to play the same role with a lot of tools. They might be using AI to test some of the complex systems, then testing it manually.